If you're a dog owner, you are a dog trainer.
That's what our goal is.
Some say these two trainers were quietly in the shadows. Robert Weatherwax, last of the legendary Lassie trainers, from the world's greatest movie dog training family, was quietly hidden in his TV work. And Christoph Clugston, elite action K9 trainer, was traveling from the sub-zero Arctic to the sweltering jungle heat, training dogs on 3 continents. But a chance meeting changed all of that. Now, Robert and Christoph have joined forces and they're breaking the silence. For the first time, the secretive and hidden world of the movie dog trainer and the science of the elite tactical trainer will be revealed. That's right, they are out of the shadows. Welcome to Tactical Practical.
In this episode, we're going to be very specific and we're going to tell you how to save your dog's life. And one of the things that can save your dog's life is giving them permission-based boundaries, or they cannot leave a certain area without permission. You can look at it both ways. And one of the big things, of course, is to keep the dog on your property and out of the street, especially if you live in the suburbs or in the city and you have a front yard. So you're going to teach the dog how to stay either on the driveway or on the sidewalk, but not get into the street without your permission. Boundary training, permission-based training, there's a lot of things you can call it, but it's basically saving your dog's life. And this is a process, and there are a lot of steps to this, and there's also a lot of levels to this. And the dog can do it initially, doesn't mean that the dog can do it when a squirrel runs by him. That's a higher level. That's higher level distraction. Well, we'll get to that. And we're going to actually show you some footage from Robert training a client's dog in the beginning stages of this, so you can see an actual dog that's never been trained for this, never done this before, and the very beginning stages of this. And then since this is something that Robert is doing recently, actually, let him start off with how he goes about training it, and then I'll come back in and say a few other things. But again, this can save your dog's life. Take notes, replay this, and keep this for further reflection and knowledge. Anyway, Robert, let's hear it.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you from experience, I can tell you that, a lot of trainers put a lot of emphasis on a dog staying in one position, being in a sit in one particular place. That's great if that's what you need. But that's not the kind of thing that can sustain a boundary stay like I like to teach with my dogs. The whole idea of the boundary stay is dog has an outlet. He's not nailed down in one place. He has room to explore his area, the grass within his yard. He gets to go, if you want to extend that to your own driveway, that's fine. But one thing he has to understand is there are certain limits that he cannot exceed. And for example, when I'm teaching a dog a boundary, you'll notice, and to me, that's when you know the dog's starting to click, is that they start looking at the boundary themselves. They go out to a spot and then they go lateral. They don't go forward over the boundary. They go lateral because they know that boundary isn't just a 5 to 10 foot wide boundary. It's a boundary that goes as far as the curb goes, as far as the grass goes. So you want to always give your dog that outlet. It's not the same. This isn't about stay. I don't even call it stay. I call it stay in there, or whatever you might say, area, what term you use. It's a more flexible stay. It's not a stay that requires the dog to be in one place, in one spot, in one position. Because I'll tell you, it's harder to sustain that than to sustain a stay where they can actually move laterally within the territory you've assigned to them. So, keep that in mind that this isn't stay. This is, like Christoph was saying, this is a boundary or a territory that they're confined to. This is not stay. It is just stay in an area and do never exceed a certain boundary. And you can give them whatever boundaries you want them to have, but be consistent about the boundaries. The curb doesn't count on Wednesday, and then, the driveway doesn't count on Tuesday. It's got to be the same all the time. The rules are always the same. They never change. Once you put them in place, never change the rules. That's why everything needs to be planned. That's why I say in my book, be thinking about what you're going to do. Have a plan. Because if you go out there just winging it, you're going to make mistakes, and then you're going to have to go back and fix the mistakes that you made. Do it gradually, and I'll give it back to Christoph, and then when it comes back to me, I can go into more specifics about how you'd start that process.
That's very important to conceptually understand this. It's a reservation. You can say it. Don't go off the reservation. That's one way as a memory technique. Also, the dog has a plot of land. Again, we're all about location. It's not about the position, which is a very important, salient thing to know. That yes, the dog has a plot of land or a plot of driveway. And it's very important that we're using surfaces because dogs are tactile and they learn very quickly. And that's one of the reasons why we use locations because the dog and different surfaces because the dogs can learn that much faster than some abstract position. So if you're telling the dog to remain on the driveway and not leave the driveway, he knows when he leaves the driveway because the surface changes. And it's easy to teach that, train that the dog is now at the boundary, at the limits, at his limits. Now, I would recommend to begin with that you don't take 1 acre and say that the dog can be in 1 acre because it's going to take you a long time to get that concept across to the dog as far as where the boundary is. You need to start out small and then if you want to increase it, yes, increase it. But this works really well if you have a very delineated difference. And once again, Robert's using curbs with a lot of his clients. That the curb is the end where the dog cannot go into the street without the owner, without permission, because there's a step down, and the dog can learn that, and that's there. That runs along the property or runs along the front of the house or whatever. In the urban settings, that's right there. Now, if you happen to be somewhere else, you can use grass. The dog cannot go from the grass to the tarmac without your permission. What I'm trying to get across to you, big secrets, I mean, we're handing out the precise information here, is that the dog has a different tactile surface from where he's safe, where he's okay, he can move around, he's free to roam in that area. But when he cannot switch to another surface without your permission. So I'm going to give it back to Robert until he can go further on this aspect or other aspect.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I wanted to key on one point that you were mentioning about the curb. Actually, I make the curb the boundary. I don't include the curb as part of the grass boundary. I see dogs a lot of times will be on the edge of the grass and they'll test me. They'll put 1 foot on the curb and I'll correct them right away. Because I don't want them to take that inch because, as I say in my book, once they give them an inch, they'll take a mile, right? So don't give them the inch. If anything, make them go a step further back just because they tried to take a step further. Mm-hmm. So, and of course, as I mentioned in our previous podcast, that you have to start with the long leash, and like Christoph said, you have to start with a small area first because you can't be too far away from the dog because you don't have any control, right? You have to wait until you build some control, and then you can expand the distance that you're working within. Now, what I'll do, like I say, is I'll lay the long leash out behind the dog, and I'll let the dog go all the way to the end of the boundary. If they cross the boundary, I'll give a very strong, loud correction, like a nothing. No, there's no words. This isn't no, you're a piece of crap, whatever. This is just a noise, right? Yeah. And that's it. And the dog responds to it because it's almost like they've been verbally shot, right? And then, of course, you go in right away to bridge so they're not in a panic mode. They don't stay in a panic mode. You go right in and tell them how great they are. That's wonderful. You give them a goodie. You praise them. And then you you go back behind them again. What I like to do is I put my clients out in the street ahead out where the dog, it can't be. I'll put the people out there, the owners, because I know that's going to be a good distraction. That's why home training works so well, because I can use the owners against the dog. Because the dog's not going to be attracted to being with me as he would be with their own owners. So I'm using them as bait, and I'm the cop that's standing in the bushes, just kind of observing things, making sure that they don't break the boundary. But I want them to break the boundary because it's not until they break the boundary that they start to recognize, oh, you mean this boundary goes all the way around the house? Like this boundary isn't just here. This boundary's here, it's here, it's here, it's here. And before you know it, they're going around your yard sniffing the boundary because they recognize, they want to know themselves how far this boundary goes. They want to know what's at the end of the tunnel, right? So let the dog explore. Don't try to keep the dog confined. Once he understands the boundary, let him explore the area within the boundary freely. Don't hassle him over nibbling on grass or eating a leaf. As long as it's not toxic, just stick to the task at hand. Don't sweat the little stuff. And Christoph will tell you, why that worked.
Yeah, okay. So one of the things that I would say, here's one, okay, giving sequential structure to this, as far as the training of this, I would start initially with behind the dog and allowing the dog to get close to the boundary and then recalling the dog to me and giving them reinforcement there. Because again, you want to give the dog reinforcements for a specific area location, and that will generalize to a larger one. But they're never going to be reinforced for going off the reservation, as it were. I would start out that way. Then, once the dog will not go past the limits, and again, what Robert's talking about is the making a signal, and it disrupts the dog. And these things can't think like human language. There's no semantic weights to this. It's not about that. It's a signal, like a stoplight is to humans. We use almost the same thing. I do the That's what I use. One of my dogs just looked at me for doing that. It's like, what did I do wrong? Nothing over there. But anyway, we use that to disrupt the dog, bring him out of what he was going to do. You get the dog to return to you, reinforcement for coming back to you, getting away from the area that he was going to. So there's a heavy reinforcement reward history with being on the safe area, and we're gonna go from there. It's almost like you're the invisible fence, but you're the thinking invisible fence. And this is the beginning stages. This takes some time. Robert, how long, for example, do you take to train this in the usual average pet dog?
To be honest with you, I mean, assuming that it's a dog that's, where the behavior is really not an issue, then it typically is a pretty quick process. I've been doing this a long time, so I've learned how to take shortcuts to minimize. That's what happens when you work with more dogs. You learn better ways to do it, shorter ways to do it. And I can get a dog to where I'm no longer behind the dog, to where I'll actually shift around where the owners are, be out in the street with the dog with the leash behind them. And if I see a distraction that the dog sees, because you want to be watching the dog, you want to know what the dog sees. So the dog looks over there, he sees a squirrel, right? I shift my direction. And I put myself right there, because I know if the dog runs by me to get that squirrel, the leash is going to go by me as well. So, and I have a knot tied on the end of it. So even if it gets to the end, I'm going to get the knot. And that's why I do it, to let them, think that they're free, and then, oh my God, I failed. And when they get that far away from you and fail, they start to think twice about leaving you even 10 feet, 5 feet, 10, because they think you're a magician, right? Yeah. They think, oh my God, how'd he do that? I didn't even see him use his hands, right? And that's why you can't rely on a short leash, because once that short leash is out of your hand, your dog's gone. He's not coming back. You have to be in a position to correct your dog from a distance, or you're wasting your time, unless all you want to accomplish is to work 5 feet away from your dog. Mm-hmm. But I know that that's not realistic, that's not practical, that's not tactical, and it's gonna put you and your dog in danger.
Yes, absolutely. This is what we're talking about. We're giving the breakdown here, people, about how the steps are done, because this is about saving your dog's life, and we're getting there. We're getting there. These are the beginning steps still. Now, this does not mean that your dog is safe right now, completely safe, but this is how we start, how we both start pretty much the same way, with some little bits of differences. But we got to talk about something that's controversial to some people, but not to anybody who cares about their dogs, and not to anybody who works with working dogs or hunting dogs. And that is because we're going to get to a point where that 50-foot leash is not long enough, because as Robert's talking
that's
about,
right.
50 feet even is not reality. We need to be able to do things from further away, and we want to make the dog think that we're omniscient. This is really what we're trying to do, that we see all and we know all, and we want to have these problems happen when we do actually see them happen, and then we can stop them, so that the dog later has this interrupt that, the last time I did that, I got stopped. And so what do we mean by this? Well, we definitely want to stop dogs from chasing motorcycles or cars, or rushing out into traffic, because that's the end of a dog's life. And look, a little bit of discomfort to a dog or to a human is much better than them losing their lives. All right, people, hear me again. If you see a 10-year-old child trying to stick his hand into the fire, you're going to slap his arm as hard as you can to keep him from getting his arm burned. Now, no, well, that's abusive. No, it's not. It's actually caring about the kid and saving the kid from who knows, horrendous deformity. The same thing, if we're going to use an electronic collar for this, which is what they were originally designed for, this very fact. Gun dog guys are the ones who developed this. Like a lot of things, they're because it serves a purpose, and they're keeping their dogs from getting killed, especially if they're going after razorback hogs and hogging or chasing after deer and things like that. They might get shot, and that is to use the collar as an aversive. I mean aversive by letting the dog know, hey, you're going to go that way. We're going to disrupt you. And it's the same thing. That's what electronic collar does. It disrupts them from what they're doing because they're intent on this. So at a later stage, after you've already done the things we're talking about and done it more than a week, you've done it for a while, and then because you've got to gradually increase your distances. You can't go out to your driveway, there's no distractions, and you work for 3 days, and then you suddenly think, oh, I can now have my dog with cats running down the street, and he's gonna not go after the cat. That's not true. So you have to sequentially structure this. We want to layer the electronic collar in. I think, Robert, you do the same thing, right? That comes later, after the initial steps, right? You don't start with
Yeah, well, they work hand in hand. And as a matter of fact, I didn't really use the electronic collar until I moved out to Texas. All these years I've been training, I've been doing it old school, playing poker with dogs. But I realized, talking to a friend of mine, a colleague who I've known as long as we were kids, and he's also a motion picture trainer, a guy named William Grisco, who taught me how to use the collar, and he worked with me for a while with certain intricacies and scenarios and things like that. So I already understood the basic Pavlovian technique about distraction. So it was an easy thing for him to teach me. When I got here to Texas, I started using it because in LA, most people are living in a city, and their dogs you don't really get to utilize a long leash, unless you're in a field or a park or something like that. But here, everything is a park, everything is a field. Nobody has fences, right? So I realized that I had to have a way to get from the 50-foot leash to beyond. So what I did is I had the dog on the training collar with the 50-foot leash, and I'd put the collar on ahead of time. You can't put the collar on and then start pushing buttons. It just does not work. You put the collar on, you let the dog wear it for a while, get used to it, just like you would a training collar when they first wear it. And once they feel comfortable, not really thinking about it, they're not trying to scratch it off, then you can take them out with the 50-foot leash. And if they don't go beyond 50 feet, you may never have to use it. If they keep coming back at 20 feet, 25 feet, you're golden, right? But if they test that boundary, that's when you have to use the collar. And I try tone first, I always start from the bottom and work my way up. The same way I train in general is I'll start with the tone. If the tone doesn't have any effect, I'll go to the vibrate. And if the vibrate works, or let's say it doesn't have an effect, then will I go to the top level. A lot of times the vibrate works, but not well enough. So sometimes I'll go up to the electronic level, and the stimulation level, as William calls it, just to make the vibrate work better. So I might go to the electronic portion, come back to vibrate, and now the vibrate is rejuvenated and it works better than it did before. So there's ways to, get the dog that they have to know that, if they don't react to it, then you have to go to a higher level, pure and simple. A lot of these collars are set from anywhere between 1 to 16 or 25, depending on the one you get. You don't even feel it at about 4 on electronic collar. I'll put it on my hand. Sometimes I'll let the client feel it, before I actually use it, and say, this is where I'm going to leave it. Because that 4 doesn't change the vibrator or tone, but it does change the electronic current that runs through the collar when you use that third feature. So the 4, I leave it at 4. That way, if I hit the wrong button accidentally, nothing really happens to the dog. It's only when I turn that up a little bit that the dog will actually feel it. And, every dog's different. So, but I don't recommend, like, if they don't react to it at 5, that you just go to 6. I would skip a number. Because what happens is, like the frog in boiling water, they get used to it if you do it too gradual, right? If they're not responding at 5, go to 7. Because if 7 works, you might be able to go back to 6. It's just a matter, you got to feel it out, but you got to start low and work it out and learn about your dog. You can't just put it on 16, pushing the button. And not only that, but I would recommend that you at least have one lesson, even if you only do one lesson with a trainer who knows how to use it, so that you can learn how to use it properly yourself. I mean, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and the whole thing is this is a whole nother episode really because the tactical guys we use them and I have several and the top if you're gonna punch out for distance is Garmin. Some people use Dogtra, they don't go as far, but for training purposes I use E-Technologies. Which will reach the ones I have a mile. That it's a straight, nothing in the way. Now the Garmin punch out, one of mine punches 4 miles, and it's the distances that you can see my dog doing recalls and stuff. We go out that far, but I'm not using it just for corrections. I'm using it also for. Mine have lights and they have tone, and I'm using the tone for the recall actually. And vibrate, it depends. And this is very good for, by the way, for dogs that are deaf. Is using vibration is a great way to respond also. But this is a progress. And what I'm going to say is like every maker's levels are not the same. And the cheap ones are not good because the levels are not. They don't always work well. So and. For example, some of the E-Technologies has 120 levels, and you cannot feel a level 12 if you put the collar on your wrist or your arm. You don't even feel 12. So it's very gradual on the increase, and the technology they use for the pulsing is different too, and they talk about that. But you have to also have the connection. It has to be the connection has to be solid, and this is a problem. A lot of people don't, and then one day they get the connections good, the other day they don't, and so this is where they're jumping up in the levels and stuff. So this is a whole nother thing. Like Robert said, you need to have training with it. It's something that we can do again in consults or video conferencing with you people out there, but we want to make certain that this is a tool. It's just like a salad fork doesn't work with soup, okay? There are certain tools that we use that are made for a certain situation, and this is definitely the tool for this situation. You don't start with it, you don't jump around with it, and you don't fool around with it without some training, actually. This is one of the things where you need to have some sort of background somewhere from this. But this is where we go to, and what we're doing is giving an overview of the entire process because, again, this is about saving your dog's life. And this is something that will and can save your dog's life. This is also another reason why people will throw away their dog, and by throw away I mean give them to the pound, or what they would call them shelter. This is a misnomer. It's not a shelter. There are pounds where they kill dogs because the dogs take off. They leave their property. They run away. On our last episode, we were talking about the doorway. And so we've expanded it now to not just the doorways, but when you have these two things down and you add a recall in, you've got what would be considered a well-behaved dog. And this is also what most pet dog owners want. This is the army right here. If you get these things here, right, boom, boom, boom. Now, of course, we do more than that. And especially I want to work with people who want to become better. But remember this, people, this is something that's very important, and I don't think enough people realize this. If you're a dog owner, you are a dog trainer. A dog owner is a dog trainer, whether they know it or not, because they are reinforcing patterns and allowing things to happen. Even by not doing something, you are doing something. So it's better to be an educated dog owner, ergo dog trainer, than not. So this is one of the things I want to get across. Robert, what do you have to add to that to any of these aspects? What do you got?
No, I agree absolutely in the fact that you have to be consistent, because every time that you're too busy to correct the dog, nip it in the bud. Don't let it become a bonfire. These things tend to accelerate when you let them get away with it, and you're going to find out that those things will come back to bite you, and then you'll think it's the dog's fault. And really, all you did is you gave permission for the dog to fail, and there is no option to fail, because that one time is all it takes for your dog to be killed or to lose a leg. That's why in my book I say I'm open to anything if it works for me and it's good for the dog. If it saves the dog's life, I'll use things that I don't traditionally use, like electronic trailing. I mean, even in my book, I know I'm not a big fan of the prong collar or whatever. But if you were going to use the prong collar, I'd want you to go to somebody who knows how to use it. That's what it's all about. anything can be effective if you know the right way to use it. And, that's to me the bottom line. Get your training. Don't just buy one at the store and then start doing it and figure it out as you go, because your dog is not a guinea pig. You need to have a plan for what you're going to do with that. Think about your dog's safety. That's the bottom line.
Well, and it goes to here because if this was, and I'm putting the videos in here so you can see some of the beginning steps. If this was not enough for you, you can always contact us. That's what we're here to do. Help you become better with your dog, because it's, again, the whole purpose of this entire channel is for you to be better, have a better dog, become a better trainer, and learn more about your dog. That's the whole thing. It's about the dog, really. This is the whole point. Not about doing anything that's torture. I know how some of these people will try to twist what we're saying, but it's not. What it's about is saving dogs' lives. And that's what I've done on 3 continents. I have done a lot of things that you people will never face, and you'll never see these type of people that I've dealt with. And sometime in person, when we have seminars or workshops, I'll talk about some of that stuff, but I'm not talking about it here. Anyway, so this, if it's been of service to you in any way, again, we appreciate you subscribing, liking, and sharing this, because we need the channel support. We're getting to some more people, and we need to get to more people.
That's right.
And this is one of the things we're showing you. A whole nother, what we have is 100 years combined experience on what the pet dog people can do. We can do, but they cannot do what we can do. They can't train dogs from movies. They can't train dogs like I show you the videos on my channel. They can't do what I can do. So this is where we're different. We can do what they can. They can't do what we can do. Robert, any last parting words for the people? Because I think we did a good service this time. I feel good about it.
Well, I think by supporting your channel, you're actually doing something, a personal gift for both of us, because we've been in this business a long time. And I've always been overshadowed by my father and my grandfather. I mean, they're spectacular. What can I say? So this is my way to at least approach that level, right? That level that they already attained. Because Christoph and I, we want to help you, help yourself when it comes to dog training, having control of your household in every way possible. It's just like raising kids. You want to do that right. You want to raise your dog right. And we're here to help you do that. That's what our goal is.
Absolutely. And absolutely, there's nothing more to say. Absolutely nothing more to say. That said it all right there. Robert is showing exactly what we were talking about in the podcast, in the video cast, using the driveways as a boundary, and you'll see the dog being stopped. It's on the long leash, as we talked about. Robert will do this many times. Now, this is a progression where Robert was talking about. Now he's in front of the dog instead of behind the dog, and teaching the dog that it still has to stay on the boundary, which is the driveway in this case, and not going out into the road. Once again, this can keep your dog safe and save the dog's life. Reflect on this, look back over this, and if you need more, contact us and we'll help you. Okay?